Well, welcome. It's a small group, and I'm totally excited about that because this is my first. Actually, this is my first connection to the ILC, and it's actually just my very early exposure to the constellations. Just to give you guys a little bit of background on who I am. My name's Mara Leineberger. I'm living in the United States. I'm in the state of Pennsylvania in the southwest corner. The biggest city that I live close to is called Pittsburgh.
Mm.
I came to this group, to this conference through Allison Fornes. I think it was about 3 or 4 years ago. She and I attended a conference together on alternative education in the New England area. And when I saw the advertisement for Allison's presentation at this conference, I contacted her and I said, we need to talk because she's going to be talking tomorrow about teaching in the field, teaching in the sort of, I forget the actual language that she used, but I knew we had to talk, and we got together last week and we chatted and found we had so much in common. I did not know about the constellations work, and yet in some strange way, I've been doing this work for quite some time, just with different labels, just with different names. So who I am,
I'm still figuring out.
Say that again. Oh, I'm going to mute you up. And Susanna, I'm going to mute you up as well. Just if you have something that you want to share during this presentation, it would be absolutely fine with me if either one of you just open up your microphone and stop me, ask a question, or open up the chat box and type things in that you want to ask about, talk about. And because this is such a small group, once I get through the introduction, we're going to talk. We're going to have a conversation. It won't be as much of a presentation, but I just wanted to give you some background. So as I was saying, I haven't formally trained in constellations work, except I have been doing some very similar parallel work all my life. I've been very much interested in creativity and that sort of spark that we see in people that makes them light up, and have been working to figure out how to better serve that. I am a teacher, professional educator, so I did 17 plus years in the inner city schools in my community. I then went on to be a teacher trainer in technology. I got an advanced degree, I got a doctorate in instructional technology, and became an administrator for a regional organization that worked with school districts and helped them with state mandates, but was very blessed, very led, very guided into work around creativity, the integration of arts and technology into all content areas. I think that's probably one of the pieces that's very much parallel and related to the constellations work. I became an administrator in a school district, and that position ended very quickly, which led me to begin to question who I was, what I was doing, how I could take all of the wisdom and the knowledge that I had gained in the big system of education to make a difference. I became a professor, and I now I am an adjunct faculty member for a college here in Pennsylvania, and I'm teaching subjects like mindfulness in the classroom. So my approach to working on these softer, more personal, humanistic aspects of teaching and learning has come through the lens of I'm not teaching the Buddhist practice. I'm teaching it as a very secular practice because of the demands of education in the United States, but really working to help teachers to begin to go in, which again, I think is very much related to the constellations work. But I consider myself first and foremost at this point to be a spiritual student. I've been working for the last 3 years with a nonprofit organization that's in Maryland, which is south of Pennsylvania. It takes me about 4.5 hours to get to them. The organization's called the Good Night, with a K, Good Night Child Empowerment Network. They've been working for the past 30 years to empower children in a variety of ways. The founder was actually an inner city Washington, D.C. police officer who worked on child abduction. And he found or decided that he didn't want to be just going and looking for children after they had been abducted. He wanted to teach children how to recognize the tricks that predators use. So he built up a program. There are books, there were in-school programs, but he went and served children dressed as the Blue Knight of Maryland in full armor. So the Goodnight Child Empowerment Network is I would call it a fraternal organization. I have been knighted within the organization. And so there are a lot of parallels there. As I began to work with them, I started to become very, very clear about what all of my previous work was leading me to. And over the last 3 years or so, I have uncovered more and more of my own personal story and where it was leading me. And it has led me to create a business that's called Microschool Builders. What I'm going to do today is I am going to talk with you a little bit about the work that I do. I've been in the conference since yesterday, and I've been sitting with what part of my story could I share with you in a way that would feel more like the constellations work. I'll do my best to try to honor those processes, but not being a practitioner, my skill sets in actually doing the process the way that you guys are used to is limited. So, I'd ask you to just bear with me there. So what I want to actually do is start with a question for both of you. I figured that would be useful. So I'm curious where you are, Susanna, and I forget my iPhone person. I totally apologize. I'd love to know what school looks like where you are, just so I can frame in my mind what teaching and learning look like where you are. And I'd love it if you would unmute your microphones and just let's have a conversation about what does school actually look like. And I should actually preface that and say, I know we're in the middle of this COVID crisis. Children are at home. Children are, for the most part, learning using technologies at a distance, or they've been given classwork to do at home. But I want you to think about, especially if you've been doing this constellations work, what did school look like where you were?
So I'm from Budapest,
Okay.
Hungary. And schools, the majority of the schools in my country are very old-fashioned, very conservative, very Prussian, still very frontal teaching. The kids have really not much say in the process of their education. It really depends on a couple of teachers, like in each school, of course, that if there are teachers who really care and who really turn to the students with the methodology and a point of view that is about mentoring someone into learning, then it happens in that subject with that teacher. But the average is totally not like that. It's the school, the education system demands more and more. There's a central national curriculum that is more and more old-fashioned because it's a very conservative government right now that pushes through. There's no dialogue between the government and the teachers and the teacher organizations that much. So it doesn't look good. And then there are a couple of very good schools, independent schools of foundations, churches that are not like that at all, that are very much forward-looking, using advanced educational principles and theories, mentoring systems. In short.
It sounds not unlike what we see here in the U.S. My person on the iPhone, again, I apologize, I forgot your name already. I should have written it down for myself. Can you unmute yourself and share a little bit?
Yeah, so hello, this is Abir, and I am from Egypt. Okay, and the educational system here is a bit different than um, our colleague from Hungary was saying. We have all kinds of education here. We have the governmental education, which is more or less like the colleague was talking about. It's very rigid, and it allows no room for children to choose whatever they want. And there are the kinds of school which is private schools, which is can offer a little bit of or extra curriculum in the languages and in the way of teaching. And there are a third category of school which has been introduced to the Egyptian education system, and these are the international schools. They teach like if it's an American school, they teach pure American system or British or Canadian or French. There are several kinds of school here, international, I mean. I personally work in a school which is a private language school, and we have a little bit of flexibility of we are abiding by the national curriculum, but we are adding extra material to the children with regards to the language, to the activities, and the like.
Yeah. Now, Susanna, are you also an educator? Oh, you need to unmute yourself.
Yeah. I am. I'm an educator. I haven't worked in formal education for 30 years. I do work, however, in informal education, leadership trainings and camps. But I don't work in schools anymore. I started doing some systemic work in I'm Jewish, and I work in the community, the Jewish community in Hungary, and I started doing some systemic work in one of the Jewish schools a couple of years ago. And I did it for like a year and a half. But yeah, so that's.
Did you feel that the systemic work was well received?
I think that the systemic work was very well received. The issue was the format, and also that okay, I hear myself now. That the school framework, in the school framework, it's very hard because by the time I could come in to the school, the teachers were already exhausted at the end of the school day. So we actually decided that when I will start again, and hopefully I will start again, that we're going to do more of like an outside thing for a couple of hours, maybe once a month, or once in 2 months. But I think that I worked with a couple of elementary school teachers. Was 5, 6 usually, and I think that it was very good for them as well as good for their students.
Yeah, I've found similar things with, bringing mindfulness into the schools. Setting it up as a graduate course has actually been really successful versus trying to get myself into the schools, because you're right, the days are so full and jam-packed, and the curriculum doesn't have a lot of room for this. But the thing that was the carrot that I could dangle that would get teachers interested was attaching graduate credits. So I find that a lot of these ideas, these ways of serving teachers, and I bet that the constellations are the same, they're definitely cutting edge ideas, and they push the norm for sure. And the way to get people to connect to them and to take them seriously is to give them something that they need in return for the, for the effort. Abir, have you done systemic work in the schools in Egypt, and what's been your experience there?
Okay, so I'm a facilitator. I studied constellation for 2 years, And I had the chance of introducing some of the systemic philosophy in the school in the past 6 months. So, but due to the lockdown, this was stopped.
Yeah.
And I think it was what we applied was the concept of a circle and emotions, talking about emotions and things like that. And I think it developed the children. And now we could find, I mean, students coming, Miss, I would like to have a circle because I want to talk about so-and-so.
So very
I think,
empowering.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it has been a good experience so far. The issue is, parents here might not be open to such ideas. It's a very conservative society here in Egypt. And, you know, when talking about systemic and family, and the kid might be misbehaving because there's someone's excluded in the family or someone was forgotten, and that means people need to talk about secrets and about family history, and not, I mean, okay, it's not easy for people to do that, especially when they are parents.
I would agree with you.
Yeah.
Just the yesterday and today being part of this conference, I can see that this is work for the, it's not for the faint of heart. And it's not everybody's going to be ready for it. When I talk with teachers about mindfulness, and we look at the research that's beginning to accumulate about the power of becoming mindful, and the impact that it has on your physical well-being and your emotional, spiritual self. They usually look at me and they say two things. Why didn't I have this in my pre-teacher preparation? And why are we not all doing this in our schools? And really my answer is, this is mindfulness. And I think the constellations work, it is such an intensely personal practice. It's only successful when you come to it. And in general, I have seen most people don't come to it until they're in crisis. I would imagine that the constellations work is really powerful when there has been a crisis, because, people need that relief. They need to feel the belonging. They need to make sense of the thing that has happened.
Yes, true.
Yeah.
That's very true.
Go ahead.
I just want to mention one case that it's, I think that when teachers start seeing exactly what Bibi was talking about, that we had like one mini constellation where a teacher had like understood through basically the constellation what that her job is to be a teacher, not to be the parent of the kid. Was very powerful, and that's just a very small thing that you find your place as in the distance or the closeness to the kid. And the moment you start seeing the parents behind and you start letting go your judgment go, it just eases things. And I think that's why it's powerful, because it doesn't necessarily have to even have a trauma. It's just about where I am in connection, in relation to my kids, and where I am in relation to their parents.
It's excellent.
That's very true.
Yeah, I so appreciated hearing that, and it's something I will definitely take into my mindful courses to get them to begin to really realize their role. They do feel like their role has really, teachers feel like their role has expanded, and that they're required to do more now than ever before because of the challenges. So one of the things that I love to do, and I think it fits pretty well with the constellations work and with the things that some of the presenters have done, like Ila did those meditations were really beautiful. So I would love for you, and I'll do it as best I can. I've done guided meditation before. and I want to facilitate that for you. I would like to know, what is your vision of what school could be? If you, Susanna and Abir, if you could open your own school that had constellation work at the heart of it, because I'm assuming it would absolutely be a primary piece. What would that look like? Can you just take a couple minutes and create a space in your mind? Imagine yourself walking into a space that you've created for children, a space that's not only beautiful and light and decorated in a way that's appealing to you and the children that you work with, but that's also something that they've helped you to create, something that makes them come in and feel welcome and safe, makes them feel seen, and makes them feel like they are part of a community. Not just makes them feel that way, but is a community that they have co-created with you. I'd like you to just spend a few moments there and look around and see what you can see. What does the space look like? What does it feel like? What kind of decorations and things are hanging on the wall? Or is it just a bright, clean, empty space? How many children are gathered there, and what are they doing? See if you can notice any details about those children. You know, are they of a specific age or gender? Are they dressed in a certain way? And what are they doing? Are they sitting at tables or sitting on the floor? Are they working on computers, or are they engaged with hands-on materials? Or maybe the space that you're looking at isn't even a classroom at all. Maybe the children are outside in the woods, or maybe they're on a playground, or maybe they're visiting some space in your community, and maybe they're engaged with some adults that have wisdom to share with them. So just spend a couple minutes and look at that space, and in your mind, see if you can identify the hallmarks, the key things that are present in that space, that container, to use the word that's part of your constellations work. What does it look like? See if you can notice the way that you feel in that space too. And see if you can notice the way that the children feel. And I don't want to rush you to come back. I want to talk a little bit about what it might take to create that kind of a space for children. Just know that, at least in my belief about these kinds of visualizations, they are a very stable thing that you can go back to it at any point in time in the future when you want to think about that space or learn more about what's in that space. But very much my work is similar. I believe that the possibility for you and for children in your community already exists in the field, and you can go in and look at that and see it and access it and gain wisdom from what's actually needed, something that is needed for both you to fulfill your heart's desire, as well as provide the children in your community with something that is their heart, it will fulfill their heart's desire as well. So when you feel ready, if you wouldn't mind coming back in, and if you're willing, I'd love to hear a little bit about that. I also would be curious to hear if that felt okay to you, because like I said, I don't actually have the skill sets to do the kind of work that you do, but the work that I do is similar. Susanna, if you want to just write some notes down for yourself or type some things in while we wait for Abir to come back. Oh, you're back? Okay.
I'm back. That was nice. That was nice.
Oh, excellent. I'm glad. I tried to pay attention to what your presenters have been doing, and they feel so familiar to me.
Yeah.
Can you tell me some of the things that you two saw? If you're willing to share, if this feels like a safe space to share.
Yeah, as far as Susanna, please go ahead.
Oh, okay. So the first image that I had was, I work in a summer camp. That will not happen this summer, and this is going to be the first summer in 30 years that I'm not going to be there. And so I imagine schools actually, the school to be like that, where there's a lot of experiential education happening, and there are a lot of group work, and where there's also peer mentoring, where younger kids work a lot with older kids, and not necessarily adult teachers always, so that they can learn from older generations, also those who might not have brothers and sisters or older brothers and sisters. And there where the things that they do is a mixture of learning, talking, discussing, creating, and getting to know themselves, their inner world. So that's generally that's how I imagine. And then there was a nice image that came in. It's still not totally developed, but it reminded me actually of my favorite fairy tale when I was a child. Was a story about the seven, what do you call that? The flower has a petal. So the 7-petal flower. It's about a little girl who gives away. It's a magic flower, and each petal is a different color, and she's giving away to people who need it. And it's a very, very nice story. And I suddenly imagined this school where you have one big communal area that each has, and it's round, and each has little petals for the different groups or classes around, where the kids also can go out to the field and go in to the common area, and everything is circular, so that the kids sit in circles and discuss and learn. And yeah, that's wasn't
beautiful.
Developed further, but I really liked the image, and it reminded me of the story. So yeah,
I love that. And I think you're going to be super excited when I show you the model of how we work on building schools. You're going to just be like, okay, that's a little, I don't know if you would say spooky, or just really cool. So Abir, can you tell me a little bit about what you saw, if you're willing?
Well, I saw the garden in our school, and I saw the children gathered in a very big circle, and I felt grounded, and I was like feeling, thank God, it is happening. And there was images of children having the talking piece and expressing their feelings. And there was images of me doing some kind of, there's a special constellation room in the school, and which sometimes I facilitate constellation for teachers who have some problematic children. And we try to see what is behind the disruptive behavior of the children. And this is all like snapshots coming.
Mm-hmm. Welcome, Minal. We just did a visualization about what school could be like. We talked a little bit about, before you joined us, we talked a little bit about what school is actually like versus what we would imagine it looks like. And I'm just watching the time because I know we're good until about noon. So we have about 40 more minutes. One of the things that I want to encourage you, so
But
Minal, oh, go ahead.
sorry to interrupt.
Yes,
I
I'm
would
here.
have to you see, it is Ramadan now, we're fasting, so I would have to leave within like 20 minutes.
Okay. So
Yeah.
what I'd love to do is, you saw on that where you came in on the webpage, my email address is there. Abir, if you leave and if you would like a recording so that you can listen to the rest of the discussion, I'd be happy to send it to you. And
Okay.
actually
Yes,
for all of
please.
you.
I mean, I understood that all of these sessions will be recorded and sent to us. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm recording, since this was my Zoom room, I had to record it.
Okay.
And I will share it with the creators of the conference as well. But, you know, if you want it more directly, I can do that. And suffice it to say, just as Constellations is a massive thing, the work that I actually do around schools is quite extensive. And I'm not going to even do justice to talking about it. What I thought I would do is show you how we take an idea like you just had. So, Minal, what we did was a visualization of what school could be like, how we take an idea like that and how we in a very grounded way, go about the process of turning that into a reality. So, you know, the visualization part is so powerful. And I'm sure you guys know, it's like that's the launching point for some action that we can take. And I would guess in the constellations work, you know, we need to go from this understanding of the way the system works and the different roles within it, potentially to making some changes in things or doing things differently. So there's oftentimes some grounded action that comes out of the work we do, or the visualizations, the messages that we get from our higher selves. And by the way, that's language I do use. I believe that within every teacher, there is this calling to be of service to children. And when we're able to actually access our own inner child, and to help that inner child to be at peace with whatever educational opportunities we had, whatever systems we grew up in, whether they were functional or not, when we can make peace with that inner child can then inform us as adults to help us better serve the children that we work with. But we have to be really aware of that. There are many people that I work with who I can see that inner child working through them in the choices that they make when they're working with children. And it very much gets activated when they haven't tended to the needs of their own inner child, especially if it was wounded in any way in the big system of education. So the work that I do professionally now, I said to you at the beginning of the presentation, is I've created a business. It's called Microschools Builders. And it is, at this point, I have a very big vision for education. And it's something that came to me in meditation. It's a creation of a new way of doing school that doesn't have so many borders. It doesn't have the constraints of curriculum. It doesn't have the requirements of, here in the US, our schools are governed, they're regulated at a state level, but they're governed by the local community that they live in. And then there's federal legislation that sits above that. So there's all of this control around what people can do with children and what they must complete with children. But there is a growing movement of parents who are taking back education for their children by homeschooling them. And there's also some movements to unschool children, so to let children be more the directors of their own learning processes. Many parents take that on the road and they do something called world schooling or road schooling with their children. So my vision is we can take those best aspects of guiding children in the self-discovery of their passions. And we can do it in a space that we call school, to make it safe for parents, for communities, so that people have a common understanding about what we're doing, but that are much more. I see so much in education now, and I'm thinking that you probably all do too, that education very often is not about a child at all. It's about, balancing a budget. It's about meeting standards. I hear when you talk with a teacher, very often you'll hear them say, I teach third grade. Well, third grade is not a child. Third grade is a concept. Or I teach French. Well, French is a language, but actually the teaching, the aspect of sharing knowledge and wisdom is something that's transmitted person to person. So we teach children. We perhaps share knowledge and wisdom from various domains. I imagine a new kind of system of schools, a new container for schools that has schools that are owned by teachers who are very awake, and they could very much be teachers who are trained in constellations. But I've met teachers who are coming from other traditions who still have very similar purposes and drives within them to be of service to children, to help children figure out who they are, why they're here, what they're wanting to learn about. So my big question has been, how can we build new kinds of schools for children, for today's children? And I'm about the process of going about that in a very practical, grounded way. I look at schools owned by teachers as businesses. And so I've developed a model that works people through those processes, and I'd love to share that with you if it's okay. It's just going to give you an overall overarching idea of taking that vision of a different kind of teaching and learning for kids into grounded action that makes the school come alive and physically be opened for children. So at the heart of our work, and Susanna, I think you'll enjoy the model as it reveals itself, is this idea of, at the heart of it all for you as a teacher, is this idea of you can actually own your own school. Now, Abir, I know you talked more about making change within your school. So yours could be, owning this work within the school where you are as well. But if you would decide at some point that maybe the better thing to do is to open your own school, you could absolutely.
This is my own school. This is my own school.
You own the school.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And Minal, do you want to just jump in for a moment and give me some idea of, are you an educator? Are you trained in constellations? It would actually be good for me to know where you are and how I can best serve you. Are you able to unmute yourself and jump in for a moment?
Sure. So I've been, yes, my connectivity is really poor, so I might break up, but I've been in education for about 20 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trained in constellations, and I've done the ECL training, and I was a psychologist.
Okay. In the schools?
And I've been at the school I'm working in for 20 years now.
Fantastic. Okay, so school psychologist. And Minal, I just shared with both Susanna and Abir that I'm absolutely brand new to constellations. I met Alison Fornes at a conference about 3 years ago about alternative education. And when I saw her name as a panelist for the conference, I was very interested. I talked to her last week about what I'm doing, and she said, this is something that some of the people who are doing constellations work might actually be interested in. So I'm conceptualizing, if you are a person who's grounded in this work and you see an alternative for kids being a school that you actually build and create with constellations as the foundation for it, what would it look like to actually make that happen? So, we started with your own vision of what a school could be. The first thing that happens in the building process is we've identified some things that will happen for you. The first thing that happens as a teacher or a psychologist or whatever your role is in building a school, and Abir can probably relate to this, you have more freedom. There's more ability to do what you need to do with children, what they actually need in the moment based on the issues that are coming up or based on their desires. There's the ability to have more fun because you're not necessarily constrained by curriculum or governmental legislation. You're able to be more present to the children. They're able to have more fun, and you're actually able to flourish. And when I talk with teachers about that, I actually mean in owning your own school, you have the ability to manage your school's budget. And so there is freedom to have the monies go where you want them to go. And you have the ability to pay yourself better than you can often be paid working for someone else or working in a public entity. In order to do that, to have those three aspects that come with owning a school, there are some foundational elements that need to take place. And when I think about it, it's taking this idea, this vision that you all just came up with in the meditation, taking that vision and creating a blueprint for how you'll make that happen. If you think about, anybody who creates anything starts out with a vision or an idea, but what they have to do in order to make it happen is they have to translate it into some sort of a plan. And so having a blueprint for your school that shows how it will happen will help to get other people involved in your idea and to work with you on it. Once you've got that blueprint down, you'll take that blueprint and you'll actually launch your school. And in this climate, launching, my model for launching a new school has been to do it in what we call a microschool version, a school that's very small, that's very intimate, that's very personalized. And even during this crisis, this model is super powerful because I will tell you that a couple of my clients have had no issues whatsoever with the changes in the regulations about where they could be. One of my schools was actually able to stay open much longer than the public and private schools because she only has 7 students. So she was able to stay open and continue to work with her students directly, safely, until the stay-at-home orders went into place here in the U.S. And she will be able to be more responsive and be able to move in and out of physically meeting together and working online more easily because she's so small. The third petal on the flower, Susanna, which I think is just really interesting, is actually going and forming your school. So there are some steps that happen once you've mapped out the launching of your school to actually getting families recruited, getting the school opened, and then thinking about how your school is going to create some kind of a lasting change in your community. And I like to think of that as the legacy, whether it's that you pass your school on to one of your own biological children, or one of your students grows up and becomes the director of the school when you're no longer able to do that work, or you gift the school to the community. Once you open a small school that's really dedicated to the heart of children, it's kind of difficult to go back to. I don't really think it's very useful to go and close those down. So we think about creating legacy. So as I work with folks on this, we have found that there are 9 processes that sit around this model that we go through in order to make all of this happen. So in that first foundational aspect, we really want your school to thrive. And in order to do that, it's important for you to have real market intelligence that lets you see your school as a bespoke solution, as a niche to your community. And the thing that we like to ask is, who is your ideal student and family? And what is the solution that you provide that's not available anywhere else? So if you want to go this direction, before you do anything else, you want to see if this vision that you've had actually matches a specific need, and you want to take a look at what's already in your community. And you want to really think about that child that you saw in there. Oh, go ahead, jump in, Abir. Are you? Yeah.
I need to excuse myself because
Okay.
it's time for iftar now. I don't know if you know about Ramadan or not, but
Yes.
we fast from sunrise, from dawn till sunset. It's about time. I'm very sorry.
Don't
I have to
apologize.
leave.
Enjoy your prayers, please.
Yeah, thank you. It was no, it's about eating.
Oh, you're going to go eat. Yay.
Yeah. So thank you. It was nice meeting everybody. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Nice meeting you. Bye.
Yeah, bye.
Okay, so we were talking about if we want to build a school, we have these three foundational, we have the foundational aspects, we have creation aspects, and we have formation aspects. And so once we've identified the market that we're working in, knowing who our students are and knowing what they need, and we've identified the fact that those things are actually missing in the community, we have a really good foundation to build a school on. Greetings. I'm totally going to butcher your name.
Mara, just call me Fee. Sorry,
Fee.
I've been away all day and I'm just jumping in. So please, if I'm disturbing you, I apologize.
You're not. This is a nice small group. And I'm going to give you a really short recap so you know where we are. We talked first about what school was actually like where we are. And you can, if you want to just in a minute, tell us a little bit about school in the Netherlands. Then we did a meditation where we went into the field and we looked at a school that would meet our heart's desire as an educator, but would also make children really happy. And we spent some time there looking at what it looked like. I said to the gals that I actually am very new to this work with the word just absolutely flew out of my head. The constellations work, I'm very new to it, and yet it feels extremely familiar. I have not trained in constellations, but I have been doing very parallel work. I teach mindfulness. I do lots of meditation work, and I absolutely do work in the field, although I don't call it that. I'm in the process. I have a business that helps teachers to open schools in their community. That's a unique solution to whatever it is that the teacher needs and whatever it is that the children in the community need. So we're just talking, I'm walking everybody through a model that that I've created that shows how you can take this vision of what school could be like and take it into grounded form. So we are just working through these, taking your idea into a blueprint. And the first thing that we talked about was we have to know who your ideal student is and how you can go back into that meditation and into that vision and really get to know who that child is, that child you're here to serve. We talked about even using the constellations as a foundation for opening a school. So do you want to take just a moment and share with us what schools are like in the Netherlands? I think they're much, much better than they are in a lot of places, correct?
I'm really mindful of taking time away.
You're not.
So just very, very briefly, I live in a small village close to a big city. And in this small village of about 12,000 people, there are 6 different schools, some of which are religious, some are non-religious. And across the band, there is a mix in terms of Montessori or Jena Plan, so there's quite a number of alternative types depending on what you as a parent want and what you think is best for your child.
Okay. Well, you are so super lucky.
I agree.
We have some places like that here in the US, and even in places where there are lots of alternatives, people are still opening micro schools because what I'm doing is I'm looking for teachers who are ready to actually put the student back in the heart of education. So this model, when you see it says your own school, it just as easily could say student. Because if we are not if we're not thinking about what the student wants and needs and then serving that, then the school isn't actually about the child. It's about our inner child or whatever our baggage is. So, so I'm going to just walk you, and I'm going to have to sort of speed through it. Yeah, I'm going to walk you through the process that we use to help people to build their own schools and to make sure that they're actually a thriving
community
business. Well, actually, we're building the schools as a business, and we're doing it for a reason, because it sets it out apart from a lot of the government regulations. It's sort of, it can be a private school, but we work at the legal ramification pieces depending on where you are to make it as focused on the child and not on any kind of legal constraints as we possibly can. So after you know your market, and Finn, it sounds like you really know your market, the next thing up is to set up your business. So to do that, really what we want to do, the point of setting up your school as a business is to create confidence in prospective families, and to make sure that whatever we're doing meets the legal statutes, and so that we're not, violating any kind of, legal statutes for what we can do. We're mapping out a business with a business plan so that when we're communicating with families, we're really clear about what it is we do. The next thing we do is we suggest that you work on building a brand. So in this foundational piece, we haven't done anything yet related to finding a building or mapping out curriculum. It's been all about figuring out who the family is, what they need, figuring out what we can legally do, and then creating communications pieces, marketing pieces that directly address that. And the challenge here is to do it in language that is pointed at the parent. So the biggest challenge in marketing a school is that you're going to serve the child, but you actually have to sell the school to the parent. So, you'll want to spend some time thinking about where do parents, especially nowadays, I'm going to date myself, I'm 52. So today's parents are in their 20s and 30s for the most part. And they're a different generation than mine. So when I think about communicating to them, I have to look at the channels that they're using, the language that they're using, what their pain points are, what the challenges are that I can address in creating a school for their child. And I have to use the language that feels familiar to them so that I can reach them. Once I do that, then I get to go to the sort of fun parts of actually making it happen. So I get to think about space. And when I think about space, I like to look at a location for a microschool, but I like to look at it with sort of a 5-year plan in mind, because I may have, Susanna, when you went into that vision, you may have seen a space that isn't the space you're in, and it may be your dream space for what a school may look like. It may or may not be possible to find that at the beginning, or it may not even be, fiscally a good choice in the beginning. And so when we think about space, oftentimes we scale it up.
To be like that.
I mean, I have a client right now who's been running her micro school in her basement for the last 3 years. And she's now at the point where she has enough students, she has enough momentum, and she has enough of a following, and she's got enough people enrolled for fall that she is going to purchase a farm space this summer. So, she's scaling that up. So once you have the space piece figured out, then you want to figure out your own value. And by that, we're talking about asking people to pay tuition in our micro schools. And so in order to do that, we want to have tuition that balances the budget and is a good value to parents. And so you'll want to create something called a value proposition. In knowing who you're serving, if it's something that's not available, and Finn, this, let's say if you were going to be creating a school, if there's already a Waldorf school and there's already a democratic school, what is it that they're more progressive, there's more freedom there, but is there something that they still aren't providing that's wanted or needed? And maybe it's this constellations work. My client in Minnesota has her school is called Awakening Spirit School, and it is for a highly sensitive, intuitive child. I would think that those would be the kind of kids who would really gravitate towards the constellations work. So the languaging that she's using, I think, is very much related to the kind of child that would be very much invigorated by constellations work. But we want to be able to talk in language that the parents will understand. So maybe talking about the fact that your child is sensitive or intuitive is the language that parents can hear and can digest and understand. And I feel pretty certain if you go back into your vision of what school looks like in the field, you can actually get the language that's needed. Especially if you take some time and maybe go back to that vision and invite the parents in for a parent meeting, and you take a good look at who those parents are that show up. So once you've got your tuition set and you know how to communicate the value of what your school does, you can then start to tackle the issues of how to do teaching and learning. And really what sets microschools apart, in my mind, at least the way that I define them, is that primarily we're letting students be self-directed. So you want to think, again, how would you have teaching and learning be different than traditional public and private schools? Is there a way to work with kids now that better meets the needs that they have, that better honors who they are as human beings, as co-creators? Now I'm going to have to really zip through because I've got like 1 minute to finish up with you, and I apologize. Once you do that, once you have these pieces laid out, it's really great to start with 10 families. That's an arbitrary number, but 10 just feels good. It could be 12. Probably 12 is one of my more favorite numbers, but not a ton of kids. You want to start with a small group and create a core foundational set of families who are in agreement with the values and the beliefs and the focus of the school. They become your best salesmen. They become your champions. They become your co-creators for what happens in the school. Once you have those first 10 families, then you go ahead and launch the school. And you do it as a proof of concept. So in building a different kind of school, instead of it being the thing that you want for people, you assume that you've been given this vision of what is possible. You go ahead and find people to try that out with you, and then you make changes to it as you go. So a new kind of school really needs to be responsive to the changing needs of the families and your changing needs potentially as you go along. And then finally, to really sort of secure your vision, you will be thinking about growing your school. And that may mean finding that bigger, better space. It may mean taking on additional staff. It may mean opening up additional locations if the model that you've created with your families is really working. It may mean selling your microschool to someone who's going to carry it on beyond you. But that was like a super speedy run through the process. Hopefully it makes some sense. I want to honor that you guys are here and give you a chance to ask some questions. I can actually stick around for another few minutes if you have a couple more minutes and you want to ask any questions.
Susanna?
No, actually I don't. It's like I really like the concept of the micro school. I think that the more people become individualistic in many ways and look for what's good for them, their families, and their children, the more it makes sense to have smaller schools where you can have really more attention to what's happening there.
Yeah, that's what we're
Say
seeing too.
that like there's a certain age up until this could work, or
Really, there are no limits to how these are being built. It's what is the skill set and interest of the teacher who's opening the school? What is the interest and need of the community? What is the need that's going unmet? So, I mean, I can give you some, for instances, of how and why people are building them. I have a client in Pasadena, California, who was a teacher in private schools for many years. She developed a program for gifted children, for highly gifted children. Here in the US, what typically happens with kids that have intellectual gifts is that they are allowed to accelerate through curriculum. But what that really does is it just speeds things up with the things as they are, with the same content. And she was finding that these children really had their own ideas about what they wanted to learn about and the things they wanted to explore. Those kind of activities were generally an add-on, something that would happen once in a while. Her school is, every student has their own individual learning plan. They're matched up with mentors who have the same interests and passions, and together the child and the mentor map out learning processes that things that the child will explore and do together. And so these kids who have massive, and they're spending a lot of time working on social and emotional learning skills as well, because they're finding that these kids really don't have the skills to communicate well with others. So, she takes students in as young as maybe 9, and she'll keep them all the way through high school. But many of her students leave her before they're 18 because they're finished, and they can technically graduate. She's in the process right now of creating some collaborations with local colleges and universities to allow them to begin to take college level coursework while they're still with her. But, it's different in the sense that they'll still be mentored by her. They're still, I see her as a protector of these young people with all of these gifts. That's just one flavor. The gal who's in Minnesota, she's got this passion for young kids who are, some of the kids have like psychic, intuitive kinds of skill sets, and they really don't fit in a traditional classroom. So she's got them in a space that's really, when you guys have talked with the constellations about feeling like you belong, these children really belong. And so it's hard. There isn't one. My passion is to support the school owner who wants to build a bespoke school that's both for herself and for the kids in the community that she really wants to serve. So it's a very unusual kind of, none of them look the same. It's not a model. This model is a process model, not a how the school's going to look when it's finished model. So I am happy to, I'd love to just put that heart around there, because really the heart of the work that I do is to create, this opportunity for adults to have more freedom, fun, and to be able to flourish by building their own school. If you guys have any questions for me, I'm going to put, Finn, I'm going to put a link to the recording that I've done in that document.
Brilliant. Thank you.
And you guys are welcome to contact me if you have any questions. If I can be of service at any point in time, please let me know.
What are you looking for in this community? How can it help?
I don't really know. I didn't come with preconceived ideas. I just know Allison Fornes invited me to come and do this. I had a feeling that there were like-minded people in this community and I know it seems to me that you all are a lot of you are doing work reaching into the schools. I too do that. I teach mindfulness in the classroom as a graduate course. That's the way I have found to bring this deeply spiritual work to teachers. But I guess, if there are people in the leadership circle or otherwise who want to explore what it would be like to begin to open schools that have your work at the heart of them, to anchor them, a new kind of school, I'd love to talk about that, because I think this work is super powerful.
Yeah,
I'm going to leave.
Okay.
Thank you.
Susanna, you're welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thanks.
it's
Bye.
lovely meeting you. Bye.
Nice meeting you too. Bye.
Yeah, so I don't need anything from this community other than I was super happy to see that there actually is a community of people who are taking very deeply spiritual concepts to teachers and into the schools, to the students. My personal mission is to build the vision that I've been given, and I shared it a little bit earlier, but I'll share it with you. I had a vision of returning us to a system, kind of a system, but not a system in the sense of one that controls people, but a new kind of a system of organized schools that are all bespoke. So they're all, meeting the heart's desire of the teacher and the children that the teacher that is in service to, and that they be linked together globally as a network. Professionally, right now, I have 6 schools, and they're only here in the US. So if there was any vision I had for connection with this group, it was seeing that this organization already had a global network. So I figured it was a way to share the message of building schools for kids.
More widely.
More widely, yes.
Yeah, okay. And we need to make sure that it's one of the things that we need to follow up. I'm just thinking in my mind is, as well as you putting the link in this chat into this recording, which is brilliant, but I think we need to gather the inputs. If you would write something plus, the website that people can follow up who weren't here.
Absolutely. Yeah, I went ahead and did the recording on my, in fact, I could probably stop it, but I'll do that when we're done. People are welcome to reach back out. And the nice thing about the recordings, one of the things that doing a conference in this way does is it creates a permanent, like a sort of a semi-permanence to this work that will live well beyond us,
Yeah.
And it makes it accessible to far more people. I don't know if there has been a physical gathering of this group before, but it's unlikely I would have known about it or attended it or presented at it. So the opportunity to hear what you all are doing, and it's amazing work. I had some very powerful images come through during the guided meditations that were extremely informative for my personal work. I was super happy to have that happen. So what comes next for us, I don't know, but I'll be happy to explore that.
Yeah. Okay. Because I can, there's a lot of people I can imagine. I need to get back to the main room, but there's a lot of people I can imagine who would be interested in this. One of the things, Mara, that's striking me, building exactly on what you just said. At the moment, what I hear are microschools as something concrete in the community. I'm imagining a sort of a much more fluid sort of mix between this sort of online work where I'm thinking about that for loads of reasons. Also because you can prototype so much more quickly what works, what doesn't, what's needed.
Yeah, well, they're very responsive. What I can tell you is that, all of the people who are that I'm working with right now have changed their models, have pivoted their schools quickly to serve their kids at a distance. One of my clients, but one of my clients has actually decided in conversation with her families that they're actually not going to go back to having a permanent physical space.
Yeah.
They're going to gather on a regular basis together in community, but they're going to do it in public spaces because it saves money. It gives more flexibility. She's in Pasadena, California, so it's in the Los Angeles, Hollywood area. The traffic is terrible.
Yeah.
So they're actually now have realized but because it's based on the needs of the community and because the school owner is really in an intimate relationship with these families. They're making changes together.
That's exactly what I'm thinking. So I can imagine that you would have certain things online and certain things where you would be going with parents or whatever into the community.
Well, the other thing is she's opening up her school to the world now because she's realized the work that she's doing. And I think I said it to you with these highly intelligent children. They have very specific needs and they're not just living in Pasadena, California.
Yeah, exactly.
But the other thing that could actually happen, Finn, is that I could find a way to bring the work of the ILC into the micro schools themselves. And so I would imagine that some of the school owners would actually be interested in learning these processes. So we can have a discussion about that too.
That would be fantastic. Yeah. Anyway, let's hold that.
Absolutely.
And we will follow that up after the conference.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been great, and I've enjoyed participating, and I'll be joining you guys tomorrow too.
Brilliant. Then
Okay.
we're going back to the main room, I think, just to close. And,
Okay.
and in any case, see you tomorrow.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye. Oh, that's interesting.